Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard Tactics video, and before we get into today's video I want to say a huge thank you to Fred Kittredge for sending in some truly amazing pictures of his 505th Siege Regiment. These guys look very Krieg and I love it. You've done an absolutely fantastic job on these models, Fred. I really like how you've got the classic dirty, gritty, grey looking sort of Krieg models, but you've slapped in there and you've sort of done some I say slapped sounds a bit like you've not done it accurately. It looks really, really neat and tidy. You've added some extra little colours in there, like some extra sort of reds and oranges and stuff on the models, and it reminds me a little bit of the World War I camouflage style that the Germans used to do on like their helmets and stuff. So really like dazzle cam. I think maybe that's what you were going for. It looks really, really cool. So thank you for sending these pictures in. If anyone else has got any cool pictures they want me to use in my videos, please post them on my Facebook page, or you can do what Fred did and you can email them to me at mordianglorytv@gmail.com. But without further ado, let's crack on with today's video. So today, guys, I want to talk about a very Kriegy topic, which is going to be light artillery. We're talking mortars and we're talking quad mortars. What should you be taking in your Imperial Guard list if you want to add some cheap indirect fire to your army? Now, this video is being based around the whole, well, we've got Hammer of the Emperor now as a special rule. And what is the best way of really, really maximizing your Hammer of the Emperor potential? Now, if you've been living under a rock or perhaps you just don't follow the competitive scene, that's absolutely fine. If you don't know what Hammer of the Emperor is, basically it's an army-wide guard rule that every guard unit gets, not scions, not auxilia or anything like that, but every sort of regular guard unit gets, and it's where if you get a 6 to hit in the shooting phase, it automatically wounds. And what this has done is it's really shaken up the weapon choices that people have started taking in their guard armies. Because before, we were really leaning into go big or go home, which is where you take single shot weapons where you might not hit very often, but when you do hit, it hurts. And now there's been a big span. Something I've been really, really experimenting with is go totally the opposite way. Go for as many terrible, crappy shots as you can get for as cheap as possible in order to get as many 6s to hit, which means you get loads and loads of auto wounds. And we've got ways like manipulating like AP and stuff like that, so that it really means that those auto wounds are actually quite powerful. So that's what Hammer of the Emperor is, and that's why we're talking mortars and we're talking quad mortars. Now, very quick thing I want to mention. I'm an old school guard player. So when I talk about heavy quad mortars, I may accidentally refer to them as thud guns. Okay, that's what they used to be called way back in like 4th and 5th edition, and that I've just never really shaken the habit. So if you're there on Battlescribe or the Warhammer app or whatever, and you're trying to find where the hell are thud guns? I don't know what Mordian Glory is talking about. I am talking about the heavy quad mortar battery, which is a Forge World unit, and you can take it in your regular guard regiments as well, but it's used to be called the thud gun. So let's just make sure that's nice and clear for people. Now, thud guns, heavy quad mortars, are a really, really interesting choice post Hammer of the Emperor update. They are 90 points and you get 1 thud gun. You can take up to 3 of them in a squad, so you can get 3 of them for 270 points. And what each one of those guns does is you get a 48-inch range, indirect fire blast weapon, so it can sit nice and safe out of line of sight and blast away at people. And it does 4d6 shots per gun. So if you've got 3 of them, that's 12d6 shots. Now, its strength for each one of those shots is strength 5, its AP is dash, and its damage is 1. The rest of the unit has a pretty durable stat line. You've got a weapon skill of 4+, a blitz skill of 4+, pretty standard for the guard, strength 3, fine. You do get toughness 6, which is nice for helping to resist counter battery fire. And you get 6 wounds, and you get 3 attacks, and you get leadership 7. But you also get a 4+ save, which is nice, because if you're a 4+ save in cover, that's a 3+ save, which is really nice. And I think also if you're firing against if you're firing, if indirect fire for other armies has been nerfed, so they take like ballistic skill modifiers and you get extra armor and all this kind of stuff. So it's really nice having that 4+ save. However, 90 points is quite expensive for 4 d6 shots in the guard. And if you take 3 of them, you're looking at 270 points, which is pretty hefty. It's a pretty hefty investment. This is why I've started thinking that whilst quad mortars, whilst thud guns are good, I actually think that maybe the standard mortar heavy weapon team is the way you want to go. I think that might be just slightly more efficient. Hear me out. If you take a heavy weapon team, firstly, it's a regular guard codex unit. That means there's never any worry about it being a Forge World unit. Well, why would you worry about being Forge World? Sometimes Games Workshop gets rid of Forge World units. They discontinue them, and then you can't use them anymore. They get put into Legends. And also, there's a price point there. It's more expensive to buy that. And also, there's always the risk that a tournament won't allow a Forge World unit. Now, that's not so much the case anymore, but back in the day, Forge World units were very hit and miss whether they'd be allowed at tournaments. And with some crazy stuff we've seen recently, there's always a chance that that will rear its ugly head again. You have none of those concerns with mortars. They are a regular old codex unit, and they have been for forever. Heavy weapons squads and mortars are just a staple. So, firstly, they're a codex unit. Secondly, they're almost half the points. So, for 50 points, you get 3 mortar heavy weapon teams. Now, in a single squad. Now, that is only 3d6 shots rather than 4d6 shots. The mortars are only strength 4 rather than strength 5, and they're not as durable. It's the same number of wounds, but they've only got a 5+ save, and they've only got toughness 3. So you are obviously getting a lot of buffs with your thud guns, don't get me wrong. But, hear me out. Firstly, save and toughness are kind of secondary considerations when you're talking about indirect artillery fire, because the biggest thing that helps protect your artillery is the fact that they can fire indirectly. The enemy can't see them. That's what really keeps them safe. In a world of such high lethality that we're in now in 9th edition, there isn't a huge difference between being toughness 6 and toughness 3 and a 4% and 5%. If the enemy wants to kill you, they're probably going to kill you. But a thud gun is a little bit more durable to that spare firepower that we've talked about before on this channel. The other thing to mention is that I said thud guns are a bit more durable to counter battery fire. Well, here's the thing. With the recent indirect fire nerfs to every other faction but Guard, not many people are taking indirect fire anymore. You still see it here and there, but the days of coming across every Plague Guard, every Death Guard player running 3 Plague Burst Crawlers is gone. You know, the Tau still have a bit of indirect fire, but not massively. Most people now are moving away from indirect fire because it got nerfed quite heavily, and instead they're moving towards things like deep striking and units that can go up and down in one turn, and also just combat, just smashing through screens and getting to the meaty stuff behind. That's where a lot of things go. It's why you're seeing like resurgence like Blood Angels and stuff like that. So that's one thing to mention. The other thing to mention is the strength 5. We don't really care about strength when we're talking about these units. Why don't we care about strength? Because we're just trying to leverage as much Hammer of the Emperor as possible. We're going for the maximum number of shots for the cheapest price. And so the strength 5 is a buff that is nice, but isn't really super good for what we're trying to leverage. It's a nice little secondary bonus. So when you take those things into account, you start realizing that these buffs that you're paying quite a premium for on the thud gun are almost secondary concerns rather than primary concerns, primary buffs that you really want to be taking into account. They're nice to haves. Now, the thud gun straight up has more shots. Straight up it has more shots. It's 90 points for 4d6 shots versus 50 points for 3d6 shots. Okay, fair enough. But that doesn't really work when you start applying the scale. Because if you take 2 thud guns, it will cost you 180 points. If you take 3, and that will get you 8d6 shots. If you take 3 heavy weapon teams, it's only 150 points. 3 heavy weapon squads, I should say, with 3 teams in each, so 9 heavy weapon teams in total. It's 150 points, and that's 96 shots. So now you're paying less, and you're getting more shots. The even better bit is you can order those heavy weapon teams. You can't order the third gun, as far as I'm aware. If that is a mistake and I'm wrong, put that down in the comment section below. But I'm pretty certain that you can only that a platoon commander can only order the mortar squads. He can't order the quad mortars / third guns. Why is that so important? Well, if you're playing competitively, you're going to be taking Cadian. If you're going Cadian and your mortars stay still, which they're going to be staying still, you're going to give them the order to take aim, which means now you've got 9d6 mortar shots, all of them re-rolling all rolls to hit. That's more chances to get Hammer of the Emperor off. It's really, really powerful. So now, and that platoon commander is only 25 points. So now, for 5 points cheaper, because 150 plus 25 is 175 versus 180 for the third guns, you've got more shots, which are hitting more often. They're getting more Hammer of the Emperor, and they are cheaper. It's way more efficient, and it's 3 units on an objective, like a backfield objective. Now, there's a couple of other things to mention. 1 point in favour of the third gun / quad mortars, and 1 in favour of the mortars. The one that's in favour of the quad mortars is this: they don't take up as much room. Now, you might be playing on a board with limited terrain, or you might have plenty of terrain, but there's lots of units you want to hide out of line of sight. 9 mortar bases takes up quite a lot of room. 3 third guns doesn't take up, or 2 third guns doesn't take up anywhere near as much space. So that's something you're going to want to take into account, and that is an important factor, because at the moment the heavy weapon teams are poking out, they're dead. They're really not going to have a good time. So that's a point in favour of the third guns. However, a big point in favour of the mortars is the fact that they can take advantage of shock troops. Now, some people may disagree with this next point, and this definitely might be open to interpretation from a TO or an FAQ or something, and I might just be wrong. I could easily just be wrong. But from my understanding, third guns, heavy quad mortars, cannot take advantage of the Cadian stratagem, shock troops. Now, what is shock troops? Shock troops is a stratagem where, if you are within height, it's 2 CP for a vehicle unit or 1 CP for an infantry unit. And I believe the artillery counts as vehicle units, or maybe it counts as artillery, but anyway, that's by the by. What happens is you spend 1 or 2 CP on the unit, and if it's within half range, it counts as standing still, and it gets an additional AP -1. That's really good, right? But there's a key bit at the beginning of the shock troop stratagem, which says, after making a normal move, you may use this stratagem, and you count as being stationary. You get the extra AP from half range. Well, guess what? Heavy quad mortars don't have a movement value, and they can't advance, which means they can't fulfill the starting part of that stratagem. Now, I could be totally wrong there, but it says after they have made a normal move. If they are physically incapable of making a normal move, then surely they haven't fulfilled that initial criteria. That's a controversial point. Let me know down in the comment section below. However, mortar teams can move and shoot. Regular old heavy weapon squad mortar teams, they can move an inch, they can move a centimetre. They've technically made a normal move, and now they get to count as, you spend the CP on them, they get to count as being stationary, so they get to reroll all the hits with their order, take aim, and they're now within half range to get the extra AP, which is nice. Last but not least to mention is, of course, heavy weapon teams have access to the concentrated fire stratagem from Psychic Awakening the Greater Good. So many tools in the toolbox Games Workshop's given us, which for 1 CP it gets them +1 to hit and +1 to wound. So suddenly the strength 5 thing doesn't even really matter, because you've got +1 to wound on your regular mortars. So those are all the reasons. That's my argument. That's my quick tip tactica on why I think that regular mortar teams are more points efficient and they are better than quad mortars. Now, if you're someone that's gone out there and bought loads of quad mortars and you're feeling really upset by this video, don't be. Because guess what? It doesn't have to be an either or. You could take both. You could take 3 heavy weapon squads with mortars, and you could slap on a couple of quad mortars or 3 quad mortars as well, and just really leverage that. If you do that, think of how much firepower you're getting. 12d6 plus 9d6, like 21d6 shots. That's a lot of Hammer of the Emperor. That's a hell of a lot of Hammer of the Emperor. You're going to get so many auto wounds. It's really, really nice. And if the blast keyword comes into effect, oh boy. Oh boy. That is one point to take into account for the mortars though. The quad mortars don't get as good a bonus from blast as the regular mortars, because each regular mortar in a squad is an individual weapon, which means if you're firing at a unit with 6 or more people, each one of those individual mortars in a heavy weapon team gets a minimum of 3 shots. If you're firing a quad mortar, it just gets a minimum of 3 shots, but its minimum is 4 anyway, so it's not as good. So blast is better for the regular mortars over the thud guns as well. Just one final point I almost forgot but remembered at the end. So that's my opinion. That's my analysis of it. I hope that's made lots and lots of sense. But let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Do you think that quad mortars are better? Do you think that thud guns are better? Tell me why. Is there something I've missed? Put it down in the comment section below. If you agree with me, let me know as well. And also, it's really important to take into account battlefield experience and battlefield accounts. This video, I have based it on my experience using mortars and my experience on being on the receiving end of some quad mortars recently. And I certainly felt like the mortars were doing better than the quad mortars. So that's my experience that I'm basing this video on, and on Theory Hammer. But what's your experience? If you come across a scenario where the quad mortars just massively outstrip the regular mortars, let me know. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you have, of course, consider giving it a like and a subscribe. That'd be really, really helpful. And of course, if you've really enjoyed today's video, consider becoming a channel member, or becoming, or you could do both, or becoming a Patreon supporter for the channel. It is, without a doubt, thanks to the channel members and the Patreon supporters that this channel is still going. The Patreon supporters and the channel members, the income I get from that allows me to go to tournaments, get experience, bring the feedback back and share it with you guys. It allows me to try new lists, buy new models, get more bits like movement trades so I can try crazy armies like 365 conscripts. Without my patrons, I simply could not afford to do that. Simple as that. Without my channel members as well, I just couldn't do it. So massive thank you to anyone who is a channel patron supporter. You guys are epic. And a massive thank you to everyone who's recently signed up to the channel membership. You guys truly helping support this channel grow and keep it alive. That's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed the video. And of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.